What is up, guys? Welcome back to Bitcoin Audible. I am Guy Swan, the guy who has read more about Bitcoin than anybody else you know, and we have got the Roundtable is back. They are with us today. We have got Bitcoin Mechanic, my brother Jeff, and Simple Steve, and we are getting into all of the news that happened in November. It is a pretty long list, and we ended up diving so deep into some of the topics that we didn't actually get to the whole list. And I had horrible technical problems because Riverside and my MacBook hate each other. And so it took us like 45 minutes to sort out all of the technical issues. And because of that, I'm actually going to, in the outro to this, so if you want to get the rest of the little news items that we had stashed away for the month, I'm actually going to do kind of a fast, super fast bullet point read of everything that we didn't cover in the show so we can round out the whole month and get all of the news. And if you have anything that you really want us to expand on or that you want to hear about in a show, just hit me up, shoot me a boost and a note on Fountain, or just a response on Fountain. I think you can do it without a zap if I'm not mistaken, or tag me on Noster. Less likely to find it on X, but you can tag me on X too. I do try to stay up to date on that one, just so you guys can get up with me. So let me know, and we'll go ahead and get into the episode real quick. I just want to say thank you to Fold, and thank you to everyone who supports this show, who zaps and boosts. And if you have not checked out Fold yet, they are having a holiday sign-up special, 20,000 sats for free right now if you use my link. And it's actually a free way for you to support my show. So it's a way to get sats and then also get me sats. I will get 10,000 sats for the sign up. And if you're not using Fold, and if you're trying to be on a Bitcoin standard, or you're trying to integrate Bitcoin into everything you do, it's really hard to beat Fold. I am a huge, longtime fan and user. I've been using them since they were just selling Starbucks gift cards and there was nothing else. That is how long I've been using Fold. So check them out. I highly, highly recommend it. And there's a link in the show notes that's great for both of us. With that, let's go ahead and get into, we got Mechanic, Jeff, Steve, and myself. The Roundtable is assembled. Let's talk about everything that went down in Bitcoin in November 2024. All right. What do you guys want to get into first? I feel like we've got a lot of little things and then a couple of really big things to cover. And I kind of feel like Trump is the thing to start on because it happened right at the beginning of the month. And maybe we should go in chronological order.
Okay.
All right. So guys, guess what?
Orange Man president.
Orange Man won the presidential election, and Orange Man has a team of people who are Orange supporters, not only of Orange Man but also Orange Coin.
Sort of. It's a mixed bag.
There's a lot of crypto shit. So you know.
No, I'm not talking about the crypto shit. I'm talking about it's a mixed bag. Like the people he's appointing are a mixed bag.
Oh, gotcha. Well, we also might get another Trump coin, which is really exciting in and of itself. And Charles Hoskinson we might be Solano'd and Cardano'd and all sort of, like, we will be the tech the blockchain innovation of the world, guys. Tell me, how excited are you about this wonderful, wonderful development? Steve, let's start with you since you're up in the upstairs basement.
I am in the basement. I think the tweet I liked the best was have fun with your politicians and all the other things you're playing with.
That's a pretty good one. Let's leave it at that. Jeff, let's move on to you, buddy.
I'll say one more thing. I'm really happy for the first day of Trump's presidency because either way, it's going to be great. Either he's going to pardon Russ Ulbricht, or all the Bitcoiners are going to realize why you should never listen to anything a politician says ever. So either way, it's great.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Either way, it's great. I actually think he'll pardon. He's mentioned it enough that I mean, he even did it after he won and brought attention to, what was it that he tweeted? I forgot. But then he said free Ross day one, hashtag free Ross day one underneath it. So he hasn't forgotten. And I'll tell you, the Bitcoiners and the libertarians will never, like, there will never be a post on any social media that does not have someone under it. It's like, you son of a bitch, you lying piece of crap. You did not free Ross. Why is Ross still in a fucking cage?
Yeah.
He will never live that one down one way or the other.
But yeah, hopefully I'm very excited for free Ross, and
I kind of want to be there.
I've already been in conversations with liberals that like are trying to blame the current escalation of the Ukraine war on Trump somehow. And I'm like, he said that he could end the war and with one phone call before he was even inaugurated, and now the war's escalating. I'm like, you get that it's the people you were supporting that are escalating this war, right? Like is
this a problem for you? Do you think that escalating the war is bad because you are supporting the people who are doing it?
The mental gymnastics.
Yeah, dude, it's incredible. And he put out a video saying we should have an immediate ceasefire. You know, like that's the best rhetoric we've ever heard from Trump ever. You know, like I don't, you know, so. And that's part of the, I mean, like, because he was clearly, you know, not campaigning with Liz Cheney meant that he was the anti-war candidate. And so, you know, that was like half the reason for voting for him, you know, Ross being the other half. So, the Bitcoin stuff, I guess it's like, I'm still an agorist. I don't think that politics solves anything, but I do think, like, as Tom Woods said, that it definitely matters who is in power. You know, like Florida, you know, your life was measurably better in Florida than it was in New York. And so like, we're going to get heat from all sorts of people all the time anyway. If we can, you know, have the amount of attacks that we're getting be some sort of muddy, like tolerable thing that we can fight and resist, then I think that's probably better. And so having some halfway defense of free speech while we're trying to finish building, you know, Keaton, Noster, and all these things is probably not a bad thing. So halfway friendly, you know, handling of Bitcoin, you know, all that is okay. So
I think I'm more excited about RFK and the health stuff than I am about Trump stuff. I've been thinking I'm on board with like 95% of what RFK says. I mean, our country is so unhealthy. It's so obvious.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah, I'm an RFK maxi. Like, if you can make, he's coming Zach, he says.
Coming Zach.
Yeah.
Yeah, the RFK stuff is I mean, and the fact that he's like a legit Bitcoiner is kind of impressive to me. But like the being able to, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if anybody will be able to like really go after. I mean, he's a lawyer. Maybe he'll be able to, you know, put a hurting on the pharmaceutical companies in some way. But like the healthcare system's so corrupt and so messed up that like it's got to change somehow. So like I can't imagine that they can really make it measurably worse. I mean, I should probably be careful what I say, but it seems like he's, you know, aimed in the right direction. My only worry is that he's definitely not a free market guy, and well, hasn't been historically. So I worry that like he'll put some sort of regulation. He'll like try to fix things with regulation, which will then be, you know, like what's the bootleggers and Baptist theory, right? Like they'll try to capture the regulatory agency or whatever they put in place.
So. Yeah, they become the very thing that they're supposed to be preventing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I see 3 dots. Guy is attempting to. He's on life support at the moment, but you know,
pull the plug.
Yeah, yeah. I think I agree with you that I agree with you that politics doesn't solve anything, but I think the point is that bad politics can definitely make things worse.
Yeah.
So if you can get politicians in that at least aren't going to make stuff worse, then that's better than having politicians that are going to actively sabotage every industry on the planet. You know, inject money with, you know, peak Cantillon effect, put money in the worst places possible and outcompete anyone that actually performs a service or creates a product that anyone would actually buy. So you end up just with garbage everywhere because it's subsidized. Like all food is made out of corn and soy, which is not food. So people are, you know, and vegetable oil, right? Just because these things are subsidized by malicious politicians in the pockets of big pharmaceutical companies and, you know, fake fraudulent health agencies that are, you know, fronted by people with obvious mental health disorders and all that. Like, if I can vote in such a way that, you know, is going to at least just make it neutral again, then agorism doesn't make sense in a world where you don't have free markets. Markets won't solve the problem of market manipulation, right? And, you know, there is a fine line. What's market manipulation and what's genuine? And this whole idea of rational consumers making informed decisions obviously isn't true, because crypto is just like the best demonstration of the fact that people are retards and will just invest in anything. But some of that is also a symptom of fiat, right? So,
yeah,
I mean, the best we can do, like, I think when it comes to like generally, you know, video games are a good example, right? It was like people will spend money on good video games and it's relatively unregulated. Then the Karens showed up and ruined it, and now everyone has to be like, you know, transgender inside video games and stuff, and people are starting to complain about this. But it was pretty free, right? It was like, wow, video games are amazing. They're made by really talented people, and like half of my like childhood is spent remembering some great video game I played, and it was like really expensive, and I really wanted it, and I got it, and it was good. So, and that was like unregulated is my point. It just kind of did its thing. And I think you can return to that when it comes to electronics more widely and other wonderful things like food. I really would like to see food return to being just a reflection of what people want to eat in a natural state, rather than just oh, you want a sandwich, do you? Well, here's 9,000 things you don't want, all put inside it, that are just all toxic. And, you know, I would love
one of the things that kind of touches on one of the things that concerns me a little bit about Trump is that he, like, is trying to combat I mean, there's like a very real problem with stuff. Like, somehow it costs less. Like my girlfriend in Canada, it costs her less to order some makeup from Australia than it does to order it from the US, because there's some sort of like tax on stuff that comes from the US. That makes no sense. Like, and so there is some sort of like subsidization that's happening on the shipping industry, like for the shipping industry and whatever, that's causing stuff that ship from halfway around the world to be cheaper than stuff that is, you know, made right here. And it's all in the shipping, because like it is true that stuff that's made here is, you know, more expensive than it would be made in China or somewhere. But the shipping should like make that not like, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. And so I think that there are some like real problems, and the government is like subsidizing crazy weird things and creating weird incentives, but then Trump's trying to combat it with like tariffs, which is adding more crap on top of, you know, like the problem is that we need to find the root of the thing that's already distorting the incentives, not try to like correct them with more government taxation, you know, like just, I don't know.
Well, the root of that, I don't know, isn't tariffs, like, bear with me here, I haven't really put much thought into this, so I'll ask a dumb question. aren't tariffs just kind of a crude way to combat the fact that Americans generally have a high standard of living, or have an expectation of a high standard of living, with like a good set of values to orient the whole country around? And when you compare that with like China, where it's just an expectation that like most people are kind of, proles doing like, boring factory work for very low money with no health and safety or any of that stuff, or expectation of high quality of life, how do you level that playing field, right? Like, how do you do it? It's even the same internally with like, let's get a bunch of illegal immigrants to do all the work no one in America will do for respectable salaries. Like, how do you do that? Like, isn't that part of the same process, right? Like, get rid of illegal immigrants, and then people just, your companies are going to have to start paying more for stuff. Like, that's just like,
I think for the most part, I mean, I've worked with a lot. I mean, I've worked in construction or whatever, and I've worked with a lot of people that may or may not be, here legally. I don't know, but it's not so much like, I don't know anybody that cares about the people. I mean, like, most of the immigration stuff really does seem to be. I think that the left is using things like the Voice of America to like propagandize people in other countries into coming here and telling them they're going to get free stuff if they come here. And then they're actually funding like convoys of people and then shipping them to major cities all over the country in order to like pad, like they're like busing these people to voting booths and stuff like that. They're like, and again, like the countries that went left this time were all, the states that went left this time were all states that don't have voting ID laws, and that doesn't mean that, like, correlation is not causation, but there's definitely some serious like problems in a number of major cities in where like it looks like third world criminals are actually being brought here. And what Bukele said, from El Salvador, he gave us, was talking about, he's like, no, some of these countries are actually sending you criminals. They're unloading their prisons on you because your government is like importing people, and they don't care, like they just want like more bodies in these places, and they don't care who it is. And so like, why wouldn't these places like empty some of their prisons and lower their costs at your expense? So I think there's really an immigration problem, but I don't think the majority, like, I don't think that the thing that people are mad about has anything to do with the fact that there are people that want to come here and work. It's the people that like somebody I was listening to, like went to like one of the, maybe it was, I don't know if it was either somewhere in Ohio. They was like, and there was the guys that like, took over the apartment complex or whatever. And I think that one was in Colorado, maybe. But like they literally held an apartment complex hostage, and like were extorting the members of the people in the apartment complex. And so like this is like really happened, like as far as I can tell, like even the main street, like the corporate news had to like, report on it, but they were like, yeah, well, it's only one apartment building, and it's not that big a deal. It's like, dude, you're talking about like an apartment building in a U.S. like in a first world country supposedly being held hostage, like an entire, like
it's an act of war in any other context. Like it's just like, imagine if that was Russians in there, the kind of like noise they'd make about it.
Yeah, and somebody like traveled to one of these places to see, like, if it was, I can't remember if it was like a podcast I was listening to, or maybe it was, I don't know, somebody, and they said, we didn't see anybody eating cats or anything like that, but he said, I literally did see someone walking down the street, like threatening people with a machete. He's like, there is a real problem. Like, this is not normal, stuff going on. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know that like, I don't think it makes any sense to try and balance out what people are willing to work for in any way, shape, or form. Like, if you've got people that are willing to work for less, then that means your market for, like, that's a downward pressure. That means there's some natural deflation happening, some natural source of deflation.
Yeah, the trouble is it's wages have to be congruent to the standard of living expected by the people in the country, you know, with a congruent quality of life. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you can't get out of the like dynamic that's existed since the dawn of civilization, which is we get a bunch of people that don't speak the local language, that have a terrible time of it wherever they're from in the first place, and we get them to do the shit work. And what that does is it erodes the bottom of the local population and the middle class too. Like, it was the same in ancient Rome. Like, they just had a slave race, which meant that actual Romans at the bottom of the rung just are on par with them because the slaves are just going to do all the work. And that's it. Like, you come back from Gaul or whatever with a bunch of like slaves from there, and then they do all the work in Rome, and then no one else can do anything unless they're willing to accept the standard of living that a slave has. So, like, how do you ever square that circle? There isn't really a way to do it. Like, maybe something like tariffs. Naively, I'm just saying, maybe that's how you do that American isolationist thing, where it's like, it's just us doing what we're doing. And like, if you want someone to like just move stuff from a truck to the back of a supermarket or something, that like, sorry, that guy's an American that's going to have like, you know, 2 cars in his driveway and a mortgage he can afford and all that stuff.
I still don't think that quite holds up, because I mean, you could argue the same thing that like your Starbucks barista is getting paid, you know, slave wages or whatever. If you're, you know, like on the same level of compensation, right? And I think there's different, like, there are different levels of what people are willing to do and what they like can work for. And so these are like entry level. Like, I mean, like my mom was barning tobacco when she was, you know, in high school, and like when she was younger. That is what they bring people in, you know, that's the sort of labor that they bring people in to do. But like that was just what people did in her community. Like that was just one of the jobs that was available. And so like she wouldn't do that anymore. But like when you're young and you need a job and you're, you know, physically capable and whatever, it doesn't like the problem is it's not like people move up based on, you know, like their social like their age and social standing and knowledge and everything else. And yes, if you bring in people that don't speak language very well and, you know, aren't well educated, they kind of fill up the bottom. But it's more or less like depriving high school students of jobs than it is anybody else. Like, because that is the sort of stuff that like we naturally do those things. Like we cover most of those jobs anyway. Now, maybe there's a bunch of privileged high school students that don't want to do those jobs anymore. You know, I don't know. Like, but like, that's not like, it's not abnormal for us to like, for a whole society to be able to fill all of those positions without importing people. I mean, from what I've seen.
You do have those rites of passage, like, you know, like you say, kids that are trying to, you know, get their first summer job or whatever, like, and that is supposed to be a muck job. So I don't know. There's that too. I don't really know how you do it. I just think it's a scalability issue at the end of the day. Like if you have a small area, a small town where you do have like the new generation coming up and there isn't like a massive demographic imbalance or something where it's like, you know, 90% of people are, you know, old age pensioners and there's not enough kids and stuff. There's a lot of variables, right? A lot of it is just, there are some economists that just look at demographics and they're like, I don't need to pay attention to anything else. It's just demographics. I can tell you this country is screwed, like just based on the age disparity. So I don't know. I think there's too many things, but for some reason, I'm generally of the opinion that the tariffs will have a positive effect, even if they're, you know, ideologically unpalatable. And if he's been talking about getting rid of income tax, which is like, I'm getting on the first plane to America if you do that. Like, just like,
if he did that, it wouldn't matter what he did with tariffs.
Getting on that plane to North Carolina, or like where in America you going?
I don't know. I don't know what state I would choose. That is a very good question. I think, I don't know. I think some just like nondescript red state, just one you wouldn't really like, Kansas or something. Just somewhere that doesn't get like obliterated by natural disasters would be good. Somewhere that doesn't like have 8 feet of snow for multiple months a year. Like
Kansas has a lot of snow, actually.
Yeah, I don't know what the perfect American state is, to be honest. The entire East Coast is just getting wrecked. Like up north, the weather is just freezing all winter, and further south, you get these awful hurricanes and stuff.
Might be Western Tennessee.
Yeah, I was thinking Tennessee.
Yeah,
maybe Tennessee's nice. A good one. I didn't like Nashville much when I was there for the Bitcoin conference. That was just an absolute dump.
You didn't like? I mean, what didn't you like about it?
It was just like I grew up in a big city, and then for the last few years I've been living in a small city. And when I go back to big cities, I'm just like, ugh. There's just drugs everywhere, and like, you know, it's just kind of filthy, you know. Like I live in this clean British Columbian socialist old people's home in like off the west coast of Canada, and there's just everything's so clean here. Like, and you get used to that after a while. And when you got kids around, like when I had my kid in Vegas, I was just like, I don't want my kid in this city. It's just like, I don't want any of the stuff around that's going on.
Miami was like...
Miami's a zoo. It's an actual zoo. There are like just like 40% of people walking down the street are like in a thong and nothing else. Like and they'll just get in an Uber with like a hot, sweaty, naked ass and just like leave sweat all over the seat. And it's like, now I have to get in there after you. This is really just nuts.
And we tried to walk to one of the, like, I don't know, one of the dinners or something, one of the venues, and we turned a corner and it was like, nope, we can't walk down this street. Like, I mean, like, it was like, we gotta go around this block or like call an Uber or something. It's just very clear that there was like I don't know, people like they were about to fight each other, and like it was very, very, very bad. So
yeah, you can pick up when that kind of stuff is about to kick off, but I don't know, man. I really like America. I really do. And if it wasn't for the IRS, I said it before, I would have just moved there by now. But the IRS is just such a bad institution when it comes to tax. It's much worse than it is in other countries. And that to me just is enough to sort of counterbalance all the other things like respect for, you know, self-defense, Second Amendment, all that stuff that's just so unique to America. Like it's enough to just like turn the seesaw all the way or move it to the other end just because they're just so over the top. Like Roger Ver and people like that, the kind of trouble he's in, that's so ridiculous. And that wouldn't happen. Like when I left the UK and it wasn't my tax jurisdiction anymore, they were just like, oh, okay. Like they sent me a letter like, we think you owe us some money. And I just sent them a letter back saying, I don't live there anymore. And no, I don't. And they were like, oh, sorry about that. That was the end of it. Like, it wasn't just like, yeah, we're going to extradite you and put you in jail for 90 years because we think you might, like, it wasn't something like that, right? So I'm grateful for that, genuinely. So, like, as ironic as it is, like, it's gone full circle because the American Revolution was motivated by punitive treatment, you know, when it came to taxes. And now the inland revenue is nothing like as bad as the Internal Revenue Service.
Yeah, and I mean, they'll steal your money and then like keep it and have you like prove your money's innocence, because like this is like how they get around like innocent until proven guilty, is that like, well, that doesn't apply to your money and your stuff. It's like, well, it should apply to your property as an extension of your like basic human right. Like it's so fucking insane. Like the way things have, like the total corruption.
I got part of what, and hopefully we can actually load back up some of that recording that y'all were talking about with the election and what it means for Bitcoin and or what it doesn't mean for Bitcoin. But there was one little section that I caught when you were talking about tariffs, and it's funny. I can't believe, like, people were saying that Trump was saying that they do tariffs like day one, which I just, it seems so unbelievably stupid to me to be like, oh, we're going to get rid of the income tax, or we're going to cut $2 trillion from the budget, but then to make everything more expensive first, like before you would do that, it just seems so backwards. Like, do you want to piss everybody off and make everybody think that you're not going to be of any use, or this is going to be like, why tariffs first? But anyway, it's funny, there's the element of capital controls and tariffs and everything. Is that good for Bitcoin? Or is Trump completely neutral? I missed if y'all had anything specific to talk on that, but I'm curious if y'all think this is positive or just not bad.
I guess there's like, for anything that's like a non-physical good or service, if you pay with a traditional payment network, there's the tariff because they're going to enforce it. If it's PayPal, they're going to enforce it. However, if I'm hiring some, a web developer from India or something, and they accept Bitcoin, then there's no tariff on that, right? So, I mean, that could be great for Bitcoin because it can't be deputized. You can't deputize the Bitcoin network to enforce jurisdictional taxation like you can with PayPal and Visa and all that crap. So, red tape is always good for Bitcoin because it's just really annoying to do that on Bitcoin for the authorities.
Did you have any points on this, Steve?
No, not really. Tariffs, seem kind of anti-free market. I guess it's like, sometimes I think of a homeowners association, and sure, a homeowners association could like decide to have a tariff on anything that comes in through its like gates or whatever. And I guess that's still okay if everybody volunteers in. But yeah, I mean, short term locally for the US, maybe tariffs will be good. Income tax goes away. But like generally long term, I don't know. Seems weird.
I think the disruption to supply chains is, when you've already got inflation and you're talking about adding a new cost in, whatever supply chain, that's going to shift and disrupt supply chains. Like if you increase the inputs for somebody's, like if somebody's buying a bunch of Chinese inputs for something they're making here, that's going to change the cost of the final product, And so, the fact that I can go buy cheap tools at Harbor Freight makes my life easier. So if all those things are going to go up in price, that's not a good thing. But I don't know. A lot of times, like, when he was targeting China specifically for tariffs, people were just like shipping it to other they were shipping it to like Taiwan, like some other country first, and calling it, like it was coming from that country instead. And so it doesn't really, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it'll be some arbitrary thing that people can kind of get around.
Yeah, you already have a situation where, because of the monetary problem, the fact that we export paper more than anything else because of how trash fiat currencies are, is you have a situation where like it makes more, like it's literally cheaper to ship something from halfway around the world than it is to make it here, and we've exported our base in like so. Adding to that, like if you shipped it to France first and then shipped it from France to the US, just to get around the tariff, it just makes things that should never have been economical to begin with make economic sense, which is really so much of the problem that we're dealing with anyway. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. If he does that day one, I'm going to just be like, what the that doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever. It's not like,
I'm not sure the ramifications, to be honest.
Yeah,
I really can't tell what's going to happen as a result of it.
Yeah,
I do think there's like there is an ethical element to like an undeniably ethical element to what you choose to spend your money on. Like if there's two products that are the same, and one of them I know is made in a death trap in a skyscraper in China, and another one was made like, in Canada or America or locally for me, right? I'm going to prefer to buy the other one, and I would even spend more money on it. So, I mean, at least when a law reflects, an ethical principle, it's better than when the law reflects an unethical principle. So, I don't like. There's something about it that makes me amenable to it, but I'm probably just being an idiot.
Well, the thing is like China. I mean, like the Chinese employment problem is a problem because China is an economic mess and you know, authoritarian like place. But like, you know, people line up by like the thousands for like the Apple factory jobs and the Nike factory jobs and stuff in China. And so like compared to what they've got, it's like the options they have, these things are dramatically better. And that's you know, like whose fault is that? Like it's the fault of the Chinese government, you know, it's the fault, like it may be the fault of Apple and Nike for lobbying for more control. You know, I don't know what the fuck they're doing over there. Like, you know, maybe they're doing the same thing there that they do here to like, you know, try and like increase their own like advantage over other companies. You know, I don't know. But
yeah, but isn't this a bit like if a bunch of like if you manage to successfully educate people that shitcoins are awful and don't buy them, and someone goes like, but what about all the people working at Coinbase? They'll lose their job. Like, isn't that, aren't you kind of making that argument? Like, let's buy good things like that aren't.
Well, like, okay, so like Harbor Freight, like I don't know where most of those tools I mean, they're made in China. Like I bought an excavator that's made in China. Like, so I don't know what the working conditions are in the factories that are making these things, but I do know that like when I like follow the groups online, that like somebody's like keeping up with people having problems with stuff, and that the products seem to be getting better. So like at least the people running the companies seem to be like aware of what's going on. And so, but I don't know what that means for the workers and, you know, the conditions that are, you know, going on there. But at the same time, like, I don't know, like, is it like, I don't know. Like, I don't think spending more on, I mean, like the difference in cost and the difference in quality, like, so the Chinese excavator is lower quality. Like there are already things I've had to fix, but they're not major things. And I would have had to pay, I paid for a brand new excavator. I paid the same price that I was going to pay for one with like over 1,000 hours on it domestically. That was like a rust bucket, you know, like they had all sorts of problems. So, you know, it's like the difference in prices is incredibly, like, it's just really dramatic. And, you know, I mean, maybe that's all just because they need, you know, like we're shipping fiat over there, and you know, like I don't know what all of the things at play are, but you know, it is good for me to buy things that make the most economic sense for me, and money is supposed to be the signal that things are flowing in the right way. When there's distortions, I don't know how you really like.
It becomes an interesting, like, I guess, kind of an ethical question is, like, is it going to make any difference if you change your, like a good example actually is like my buying a house on debt is, you know, when I bought the house, it was the house that we live in, and without calculating for any of the stuff that we've put into it or the improvements we've made, like it made it like really serious financial sense, because right now our debt is only like a half of the value of the house. The price of the house has more than doubled in the span of time since we've bought it, without calculating for the fact that we've put supports all the way downstairs and removed all the pillars and cemented in the basement, redone the kitchen. Like, we've done tons of improvements.
You've done a lot of improvements.
But I've basically gotten half the house for free because I just bet against inflation. But like, it's basically, I've basically allowed myself, because of how crappy our money is, to leverage against the dollar on a 4% interest mortgage. And I just never have to repay the economy for what I've taken out of it. Like, that's essentially what's happening. But I got it subsidized. I got it subsidized by everybody else.
Subsidized by people who were working and had the value of their paycheck go down the purchasing power of their cantillionaire go down.
But I'm a cantillionaire. Everybody who has a house is a cantillionaire, basically. And that's why it's a financial decision to do it. That's why it forces everybody into real estate and forces everybody to bloat the stock market. And, I hate it. Pisses me off. Yeah.
It's bullshit. I just did the same thing. I just had to renew my mortgage, and, you know, I did the whole deal, and it was just, you know, borrow a bunch of money. I have a house that costs more than it should, and I'm borrowing money to pay for it like everyone else does. And it's just complete bullshit. Like at every level, this is a scam. Like every single person, like the mortgage broker, the lender, the notary, like the old provider, the new provider, and I'm like, every single one of you is just in a complete scam industry. All you're doing is facilitating everyone to buy houses with money they don't have, to collectively raise the price of it, and to make it so that, long story short, all of us are just working on behalf of banks. That's
Take out all the middle steps.
I work for, like, the bank makes a bunch of money. Yeah. It's just, we're all working for an industry that does absolutely nothing. Like that old image of the octopus on the face of humanity that's labeled as Goldman Sachs, just like to suck everything out of you. Like you don't do anything. You didn't take any risk. You just printed a bunch of money and gave that to me. Now I have to give you thousands of dollars every month. And if I don't, you just have a house. Congratulations. Like, it's such a scam. And we all just participate in it. And then the most infuriating thing is when the boomers are all like, you young people don't want to work anymore. It's like, you bought a house for 40 grand that's now worth $800,000.
We don't want to work for you
anymore. Think you're a genius. And
that's where it's going, man.
Yeah. It's just such a scam. And I know my house isn't worth that. I know, like, the amount of work I would have to do to earn over $1 million Canadian dollars to buy this, like, quarter of an acre plot of land. Like, it's just garbage. Like, I know this is all garbage. You know it's garbage, but we all just play this stupid game.
Works, mechanic. That's how it works. Bitcoin fixes this. This is the great, like,
I'm in a good spot is the joke of it. Like, I'm doing really well because I've been a Bitcoiner for years. So I can, like, if they're like, oh, you got to take out $100 grand chunk of mortgage, I can actually do that thanks to Bitcoin. But like, most people can't do that. And I'm like, this is Canada, man. There's like middle class people that just suddenly had the bottom fall out of their life over the last few years, who are just like, yeah, I can't go to the dentist. That's like an $800 checkup, and I might not have the problem I think I do. It might just go away, so I'm not going to go. Like, I get charged that even if I don't have a cavity or whatever, so I'm just not going to go. Like, there's people doing that now who are like normally like middle class, affluent people, like in 2019, that like just actually have had the bottom fall out.
Like,
of their
people
life.
don't understand how much it's been bled.
I feel like I'm the person you guys are talking about. I don't own a house, and I haven't gone to the dentist in 10 years. I'm that guy.
Steve's destitute.
I'm the sucker.
I got
nothing but Bitcoin.
You can't do anything. It's intangible.
And I don't even have any Bitcoin either. Damn.
I can't even build a house out of my Bitcoin. I'm poor. Oh shit. It's gonna be crazy though, because Bitcoin will fix it, and it's gonna be nuts to see what happens in this cycle specifically, because I think, like, the whole idea is that, like, you shouldn't be sucking up resources out of society that you don't need just to park money. You know, like, you shouldn't be buying a house if you don't need a house. And the house shouldn't have been made unaffordable because a whole bunch of people are printing money and buying. Like, it just says, like, we all just owe it to BlackRock, to Goldman Sachs and BlackRock, because they're creating the money. They're holding all of our retirement, and then they buy mortgage-backed securities and then suck up all of the houses. That's why everything stays on the market for like 24 hours max, because they just print money, buy it up, and then rent it back to us. We rent the whole country from a whole bunch of people who are just close to the spigot.
They use everybody's retirements to make all the companies we buy from gay.
Put rainbows on everything. But so Mechanic, you brought something up. Let's get back on Bitcoin. Because this is a Bitcoin news show, and we're doing a roundup here.
You mean Normie news is over?
Oh no.
Normie News Network, NNN.
Steve, Mechanic said that you had a perspective on covenants, and I'm curious. And actually, Mechanic, you said something on, I think it was like a Twitter thread or maybe Nostr or something recently, that it was funny because it's something I identify with. Like, as I said in one of the recent episodes or whatever we did together, is that I still like the primitive and I like the scope of CTV. But you're 100% right on what you posted on, is that there's no construction with it now. Like, it seems useful in a lot of different ways. And it seems like it could simplify some of the things that we already have, but there's like nothing super exciting nothing to be super excited about. You know, it's not like it unleashes the holy grail of layer twos. It's really easy to build and doesn't change the risk assumptions a lot. It just it's kind of meh, I think, is what you put in the thing, which I thought was a good argument.
I think somebody ought to build whatever if they have some specific feature that they want that the covenants are required for, they ought to build a wallet that uses Liquid to do it and show us. And then, like, okay, we would love to have this on, Bitcoin main chain.
Yeah, I think it's. I wrote on Nostr a little while ago. There's this phenomenon in like any collaborative environment where there's like multiple people trying to do a thing, where everyone actually agrees that we want a thing, but no one can quite agree on the right way to do it, so it never happens. And I think a good example on that is like SegWit message signing, right? Like, we have message signing with legacy addresses, was never a problem. Like, we knew it was a thing and it worked a certain way. Whereas there's like a bunch of different ways for signing messages with SegWit addresses, and everyone hates all of them, but everyone wants them. Like, there's no, like, everyone has one that isn't as bad as the other. And so if you go in Sparrow and try and sign a message with a SegWit address, there's like 4 different standards for doing it, or 3, I can't remember. And that's just because no one can agree on how to do it. And it's the same with like BIP49, right? Like, we want to have a way where you can pay people, they can give you information once and you can pay them multiple times without address reuse. That would be great, but no one can agree on a way to do it. And when someone does just YOLO it, like Samurai did with that, people are like, no, this isn't the right way to do it. Core devs advise against it. It's like, you just can't have it. Like, all the core devs are like, yeah, don't use hardware wallets as well. And that's what most people do at this point. And they're like, no, that's not good enough. And then you're like, suggest something better. And they're like, no, there isn't any, like we're trying to come up with, like, internal Ocean affairs. I'll mention, like, I build a lot of just, Intel NUC boxes that just run a Bitcoin node and Datum. And Luke's just like, well, we can't trust that. We can't recommend that. And I'm like, all right, fair enough. Intel's backdoored. We know that. Like, Debian doesn't satisfy him either. And I'm like, all right, so what are we recommending? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, so like, all right, what's like, if Ocean was to sell like a pre-built Datum box, like, what hardware would we use? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, all right, what RAM would we use? All right, it's got to have, error correction. All right, in case the, bits get flipped and you mine an invalid block, because that's the thing. Okay, all right, we can agree on that. What manufacturer, though? I don't know. All right, so it just, like, and every step of the way, it's like, all right, we can't agree on an operating system. We can't agree on a manufacturer for the hardware. Like, at some point, you just have to go, you have to hold the feet to the fire of, like, the big brains, like the developers, and and go, if we don't do this, someone's going to make the most horrible product you can possibly imagine and just do it.
The momentum will be against us.
So it's going to work. It's going to work. You're going to hate everything about it. So how about we just bite the bullet and build something that at least isn't as bad as that, right? So I think when it comes to covenants, right, like, there's so many people that have issues with all of them because they want to do it a different way. Right. And then you have, like, APO can kind of be made to do what, APO can kind of be made to do what Covenants does in a roundabout way, but it has 6, SIG hashing modes, right? Or when it only really needs 1 and the other 5 are kind of weird. But unlike, no one's demonstrated a use for any of them, and it's like, we shouldn't do something this broad in scope. And L-Enhance is like, we're going to pick apart the useful parts of APO and just do that, which is, like, counterintuitively, it's 4 opcodes instead of 1, but it's supposed to only do one thing instead of a bunch of unnecessary stuff. Despite that, but like you were just describing what I said, Guy, CTV is, it doesn't do that alone. You need a bunch of other stuff with it. And when it comes down to what CTV itself does, it's like the fireworks just aren't there. It's not like SegWit. It's not like Taproot and Schnorr. You don't have this like, if we have this, we can do that, and we all want that, and it's great. Let's just go and fight about how to activate it, maybe. But at least we all agree it's
basically more of a, if we have CTV, then we could also have this, and then we could do some really cool stuff.
Yeah. You need checksig from stack for it to be in order to have. Like LN symmetry is a huge thing. I can get behind that all day because it's every Lightning node. If it's doing a reasonable amount of if it's reasonably active node, it's got to store gigabytes of data of prior channel states because that's the only way you can. That's the way the justice mechanism works in Lightning as it stands today. The minute you have symmetry, that's gone. You only need to keep the latest state. That is like dream scenario scaling for Lightning. And it's just great, but CTV just doesn't enable it unless you add the annex to it, which Jeremy Rubin proposed with a modified version of CTV, and no one liked it. So again, either you have to go back to the drawing board and push for CTV in a way that no one likes, or push for CTV in a way that doesn't give us what we want with LN symmetry, or you have to go to APO, which doesn't have anything like consensus. So you're not moving forward with any of that. But anyway, I've sort of gone into this before. I really just want to hear what Steve was saying because, just if I can ask Steve to touch on one specific thing. Obviously, my concern is around unintended consequences of SegWit and Taproot, where we just have people storing mass amounts of arbitrary data and ignoring prior filters that worked great, right? So we had data carrier size. You never saw op returns bigger than 83 bytes, and you never saw data being stored in other ways. Then you suddenly have insanity after the soft forks made it possible to make an entire block one JPEG, and just all these awful things that happened. And 90% of block space was just absolute bullshit for a couple of years, and now the chain is like unsyncable on hardware that was previously fine. All that stuff happened, and the people that seem completely unfazed by all that even would advocate for it and champion it as an alternative use case for Bitcoin, solve the security budget, yada, yada, yada. All those people have been the ones that are pushing for the Covenant's upgrades. And that is a smoking gun. But at the same time, I can't demonstrably point to something that is done by CTV or CAT or any of the other proposals that would suddenly take some unknown break off the system right now and cause us to have yet another wave of a new kind of arbitrary data injection into Bitcoin that at the moment we're not aware of. But all of the politics would tell me that that's a risk, but I can't find the technical explanation for why that would be a thing. And something you wrote in our internal chat a few days ago makes me think this is exactly what I'm concerned about. But where is the actual mechanism for how they would do it? So I hope that makes sense as a question.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know a specific mechanism by which it would happen. I think if there was an obvious mechanism by which it would happen, somebody would have already, talked about it or whatever. But, nobody saw that spam would end up in the witness data. This is kind of like a black swan kind of thing. Like, I don't think anyone now can predict how CTV will be used 5 years after it's enabled, if it's enabled. Like, whatever you think CTV is going to be used for now, the chances that it's going to be used for that, just because your creativity isn't as good as 100,000 people thinking for 5 years. I just think, who knows? Maybe it'll all work out. And like I would say, improving Lightning is definitely the thing that I'm attracted to most about the Covenant stuff. But in the back of my mind, remember those old Andreas Antonopoulos videos where he talks about scaling? He just talks about the history of scaling for like voice over IP and for like, the internet can't do this, the internet can't do that. And because you're always kind of like thinking about what it is now. And there will be people that say like, hey, I've thought of every possible way, and the only way to scale is my way to scale, and we got to do it now, because like if we wait too long, then like all this shit's going to happen, and we won't have any time to fix it. So we got to scale now, and we got to do it this way, because no one else can have any other ideas. And then like that doesn't happen, and then like somebody else comes up with another idea a couple years later, and then it scales on a different layer in a way that you never thought it was going to. That's just my kind of feeling of what's going to happen.
That's Jimmy Song's argument, and it's a very compelling one. And it's just, these things are possible, and without messing around with the base layer. Like, you can do it. It requires a bit of intelligence, and adding soft forks to constantly come up with new ideas is just an incredibly childish way to do things. Like, just, you can figure out a way to do it without. It's not as fun. It might require years of work instead of just changing Bitcoin every time you get a new smart idea. But the fact that they're not being done speaks to the fact that no one in this has like a serious approach about it. They're not prepared to work for years and grind something out. They just want to add a new soft fork and then have some fun, and then, you know, maybe make a name for themselves in the process, because getting a soft fork into Bitcoin is career making. So that motivation's there. And when you keep messing around with the base layer, you always create risks, and you just rug pull everyone that's the worst thing about it. Anyone that's like grinding away, working on an arc that works without CTV or CSFS gets rug pulled, because they just changed the way the base layer works. And now there's this other way to do it. So I'm not even going to bother working on it now. Like, if you tell people, you are not changing Bitcoin's base layer again, leave it alone, nothing is changing, then people go, all right, I'll build on that. And it might take them years to come up with something. But if you're like, oh, we got this new, address type coming in 8 months or something, no one's going to do any work.
They know it's going to change,
because they know that like the design space is going to change. So you have to commit to saying, nope, we're never changing this. Then everyone can orient themselves around that.
I would have two.
Well, and to Steve's point is that, like, if you add a new, I mean, like, I'm not a dev, but like when I'm working on something, the 3D printer was a good example. Like, when you get a new tool, you have to rethink
all your assumptions.
Like the way you approach problems. Like everything changes, and you have to learn how to think in terms of what this new tool can do versus everything else that you've used. And so it does, like, that's part of the reason I'm sure that it takes years. And part of the reason that we don't know what's going to happen is that, like, when you've got somebody that learned the system after this tool was already made and saw what other people had done with it, then it's really easy to make some connection that other people haven't made, because you didn't have the original improper framing to overcome, So yeah, there's always going to be,
there was a
like,
book
unforeseen
that I read. I don't remember
like
which one this was in. It's been a few years now, but it was talking about technological change that's specifically like kind of technological primitives, is like when you have like an entirely new a tool that's so useful that it really changes how you think about the problem. And was talking about how, like, yes, technological innovation and the speed of technology is changing drastically. It's just ever accelerating. But he made an argument that what's actually going to happen isn't that we're going to just forever speed up as a civilization we're just going to adopt the next technology in 10 days. He says, because when you actually see how people adjust to new technology and actually start taking advantage of it properly, that hasn't sped up. The time hasn't really shrunk. It still takes like 10 to 20 years to fully realize any new technology. And that he makes the argument that it's actually going to stretch out the dynamic, where more people are on older technology and there are more people who are aggressively like the difference in technology from the people who are non-tech to the people who are on the cutting edge is just going to keep getting wider and wider. And the optionality and kind of the dynamism of the economy is just going to aggressively expand, rather than everybody's at the new technology and everybody knows how to use it immediately.
I think it's like maybe this is not the best analogy, but it's like if you invented the airplane and the car and the bicycle and the subway all in the same week. Yeah. Like none of it would take off, like no pun intended, because it's like there's too many, like it's like you need them all to come out one by one and develop their own use case. Like, you know, it's the same with monetary networks. There's another Andreas point. Like you don't pay a parking ticket with a check or something, like or a parking meter. You put coins in it. Like there are different kinds of unit, right? Or so it's like you don't come out with like everything at once. You have to do things one by one, and then the use cases for them become clear. Yeah, and you know, or the circumstances in which you'd use a specific iteration of a technology would become like obvious, and you don't just throw them all at everyone at once because they're just not appropriate for every use case or scenario, I guess.
Sorry, on something that Steve was saying is talking about how like we just don't know how people are going to use it, and just in the general concept is there's no limit to human ingenuity. There's actually something in our news list that's very relevant to the conversation about covenants, because a couple of people, Andrew Polstra, Avihu Levy, and Victor Kolovov have, and Ethan Heilman have figured out how to do, they've got Collider script, and they figured out how to do covenants on Bitcoin as is. And the way they've done it is actually by using the SHA-1 algorithm, hashing algorithm, and RIPE-MD 160, is that you deliberately make collisions so that two different things will unlock the same script with the hash. And so one of those things can be a covenant along with like the normal, it's like, and so you just calculate it. And the quote unquote security of it is that you can create with those algorithms, because they're old, quote unquote, broken algorithms, you can create a collision in about a day's worth of quote unquote Bitcoin mining. But you can't create 3 collisions because that's going to take, and in fact, the section I've got right here is that each covenant costs 2 to the 86 hash queries and 2 to the 56 bytes of space. So for security, we rely on the assumption that regarding the hardness of finding a 3-way collision with short random inputs in a 160-bit hash function, arguing that if the assumption holds, breaking a covenant enforcement requires 2 to the 110 hash queries. So to put it in perspective, the work to spend our covenant is about 33 hours of the Bitcoin mining network, whereas breaking the covenant requires 450,000 years of the Bitcoin mining network. So they've literally found a way, literally a route around by using a broken hash function and using it broken to create the same hash from 2 different pieces of information so that you can make a covenant, which is pretty nuts.
This is what I mean. That stuff exists. You can figure stuff like this out, but if you keep rugging everyone by making other designs for it with unknown consequences, then people aren't going to put this kind of effort in. I mean, I think that's genius. That's incredible.
That really was genius. I guess a few weeks ago when I looked into that, and my feeling it's super complicated stuff, but my feeling when I was reading that was these guys have found a way to make like a proof of work style, difficulty adjustment style, different levels of brute forcing to like make this whole system where it's kind of like you can only use this covenant if you really, really want to, like computationally, like you're willing to brute force, try all combination of letters until you find out what the script was, kind of thing. Like, I was like, dude, that is just wild. I mean, it's just like that kind of creativity is the stuff I'm talking about. Like,
we haven't even agreed on which covenant we want, and somebody figured that out, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I think that, like, I'm a dumbass when it comes to these, like, the depth of these protocols and stuff. How, like, there are outputs in SHA-2 that are not achievable with any input. It's not like there's not an even distribution of like all the numbers between 0 and 2 to the 256 minus 1 are achievable in a normal distribution. Like, because we know that there are multiple inputs that can give you the same output. That's what a collision is. But it's known that there are numbers within that field, or that finite field, that are actually not achievable with any input, which is actually kind of why Bitcoin mining slowly breaks. As we start to have more than 50% of the block header be zeros at the beginning, you start to have all miners start dropping below 100% luck, because just some of the stuff that a subset of the numbers that are acceptable that are below the target as required become a bigger and bigger percentage of the the achievable things that you'll get out of SHA-256.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you can have, it's essentially saying, you've got, you need to find a number below 10 with an 100-sided dice, right? You've got a 1 in 10 side of a 1 in 10 chance of that being successful, right? But actually the number 7 will never come, no matter how many times you roll it, because it just doesn't exist. So 7 is 1/10 of the acceptable numbers, right? And then if you go down to, it needs to be below 8, now 7 is 1/8 of all the numbers, right? So it keeps getting worse and worse like that. So we know SHA-256 does have that thing, and it's probably going to be an issue like by 2040 or something. So I'm just, given the sort of the fact that these things aren't mathematical perfection, that they have these issues, how do you like come up with this reliable assertion that there's the chances of a collision are roughly 1 day of mining, and the chances of a three-way collision are require hundreds of thousands of years? Like, how can that be like I really should be asking like actual cryptographers. Like, I'm not sure any of us know, but this is just my question. I'm like, how can you make that sort of assumption and be like, yeah, this is a reliable covenant? Like, am I going to lock my money in something that can only be spent if I can mine a collision in 24 hours when I know that these algos have all these holes?
I think it's just because the likelihood of the collision is an exponential problem rather than a linear. Is that the longer, because it's the hash is still, it's literally just the space of the hash. It's not about like two different, we're talking about the collision between two different things having the same hash versus three completely different things having the same hash, which is a multiple of the exponent to the exponent. So they're on top of each other.
It's sort of the same as the value of a network, like the growth of a network.
Remember, you can't change the hash
each
after.
time you
like
add a person.
Like, sure, you could find two other pieces of information that collide into the same hash, but after you have a hash collision, now you have to find a third piece of information with the same hash collision. So it's an exponentially bigger problem to the same. So it's the fact that you can't change the hash after you already have the destination that you're supposed to come up with. Whereas in the first, it's the birthday problem. So like the reason the first one's easy to do is because that you can change both of them until you have a collision. But once you have a collision, trying to change a third where you can only change half of it to get the same hash, like, is super difficult. It's why, like, in a classroom or whatever, you only need 26 people to get a birthday collision. So that's the level of understanding that I have as to why I think there's actually something to why that is secure.
Amazingly, I hadn't really understood that, frankly, when it first came out, and I really wasn't sure whether it was a joke or not.
Who's trolling?
But I think everyone responding to the a lot of people are like, this is a joke, right? In their response to the thing, but it's actually not. Like, from what you're saying, I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is pretty genius.
I think it works. I think there's something really interesting there. And it may just be one of those things where it's like, state chains are really cool, but nobody seems to be using them. There may just be a big enough barrier that it doesn't do anything, but I think they've figured something out that's unique.
I'll be honest, like, the shit is hitting the fan with it. And I've seen an opportunity of the last week, and I'll be candid with you guys. So there's a lot of disillusionment around Bitcoin Core, and a lot of the people pushing for covenants are like, in a similar way to the way the filter advocates like me have been disillusioned with Core apparently just being negligent. They feel the same way, but about something else. And it is, at the end of the day, aligned with the purpose of like maximizing Bitcoin network's utility as, you know, as a monetary network, right? And, you know, in theory, the Covenants bros are aligned with us because they're of the perspective that if you can increase the economic density of your on-chain footprint, it will outcompete other use cases more easily, right? Like I can outcompete your JPEG with an L1 transaction, or I can outcompete it with the fact that there was a Lightning channel that did, you know, thousands of transactions, which makes, you know, gives me a disproportionate advantage. So that was the argument that they're making from a monetary maximalist point of view. And I'm like, look, and you're also pissed off with Core. So Core aren't going to activate this stuff. And you're not going to be able to activate it with a rogue client. Like this isn't BIP 148 SegWit kind of thing again. If you have a CTV activation client out there in the wild, that doesn't activate a soft fork that exists inside Core anyway, that just doesn't have activation logic in it, or their activation isn't, you know, going to work. This just won't do anything. And you'll trigger a URSF, which is maybe that needs to happen. And, you know, for anyone listening, that's, you know, the opposite of UASF. That's like the Bitcoin community saying, we don't want this soft fork you're trying to put in and we're going to actively reject it. So, you know, I looked at it and I thought, right, well, here's an opportunity then. Why don't the people that are trying to get the filters fixed in Bitcoin, which they have with knots, which is getting a lot more adoption, I'm happy to say. There's over 1,000 knots nodes on the network now, which is like a record for it, which is awesome. Why don't the people that want that join forces with the people that want to activate CTV? Because they're all pulling towards the same ends. For some reason, we've totally hated each other as two different communities, but it doesn't make any sense that we did. Let's just reconcile it and let's move forward that way. And Luke is basically the person whose weight behind in any initiative is what's needed to get a fork activated or not. And there's historical precedent for that. Luke activated, you know, SegWit was dead until Luke said BIP 148's happening, and then it happened, and we have SegWit. So, and that was, you know, without Core at all.
Bitcoin
No one in
is
Core
totally centralized behind Luke.
It is and it isn't, because Luke isn't like a massive CTV guy. He just thinks this thing has consensus. Like people see, like most people that are against it, you know, aren't strongly against it. No one's found anything about it that's like, yeah, that will break something. But a lot of people want it, and in his opinion, it looks like it has consensus. Therefore, Bitcoin Core are being negligent if they're not putting it in.
I think the power behind Luke's opinion is that he's such an unbelievably disagreeable person that if he agrees on something, everybody's like, oh, okay, we might be onto something.
I want to hear Steve's thoughts a little more, because like Steve has, my perspective at the beginning was just, they're bad actors pushing for this thing. Don't mess with Bitcoin. And even during this conversation here, I've become even more like, I don't want to do this. I just don't want to do it because of, you know, this. There are ingenious things that can happen with Bitcoin as it exists today. Like, and like, I find it so hard to not keep coming back to that position. Every time I start getting a little bit, maybe you can steel man CTV, Steve. Like that's maybe what I can ask you to do.
The steel man of CTV, I would say, well, like you said, just CTV itself isn't going to be the thing that makes Lightning like a whole lot stronger. So that's, I guess it helps, but it might need something else to make Lightning stronger. And then, you know, potentially there's some UTXO sharing opportunities that could come along with CTV if, by some miracle, some demand shows up, and by some other miracle that the kind of developers that work on opcodes are going to transition to the kind of developers that actually make applications and like make the UX and stuff. So it's like, so that's the steel man, is that like a lot of, there's a very small % chance that it's going to work out, the effects of CTV are going to work out the way people think they do. But that would be the steel man, is that those things are possible.
You made one point that you haven't made again here, which I really that I thought was brilliant and I hadn't heard before, again in our internal chat, where you just talked about who will work on it when we have it. Who is going? Is it the main people pushing for it, the Taproot wizards? So if they're working on what is made possible by it, it's not going to be on Arc or other things that are about UTXO sharing. It's going to be about spam, because that's what they're interested in doing. So the fact that you just have that mind share that's going to use the resource a specific way means that's what it will manifest as being used as. Like there aren't like, do we need Jameson Lopp and Ben Carman and those guys working on a new kind of wallet that does UTXO sharing? They're not going to do that. They've made it abundantly clear that they're not interested in that. So activating the tool,
it's only going to be used by the people who are advocating for it and want it. And so that's what it'll be used for, whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and finding people that want to build and maintain wallets is like,
that's
clearly it's its own like major problem.
Yeah.
But like, I wonder if we can build, if you could build a wallet on Liquid that has the Lightning symmetry or whatever that you want, you know, to bring to Bitcoin, and have you start growing. I mean, because we have bridges now between Liquid and Lightning, and like I'm assuming you're basically just building a Liquid token channel that has a Bitcoin token channel on the other side, right? Like somebody's taking the risk of managing, you know, both those nodes and acting as a bridge. And so if you could start building a Lightning network or a Lightning wallets that use those bridges or whatever, but that are really, really lightweight and easy to run on mobile, and you're actually interacting with the Lightning network because you have symmetrical channels, you know, being built on, you know, on Liquid because of the covenants and the stuff that's already there, then you've got like, you're literally building out the stuff that we want. And you say, hey, it would be really good if we could bring this, you know, to Bitcoin. And so you don't have, you know, you've at least got something that we can immediately port over, you know, when it, like, you know, like for all people, like SegWit happened on Bitcoin I do think that Litecoin adopting it first and implementing it first played a big role in that. Like I think having a space.
I do.
You don't think so?
Nah, I don't think so. I think that was.
I do too.
Yeah, you do.
But I mean,
I think because people were so afraid of it not being safe, and there was so much FUD about, you know, that anyone can spend stuff and whatever.
No
else.
one believed that. That was Craig Wright.
There were a lot of people who believed him and who just who just stopped. It's kind of like the left right now, who like they've been so anti like crypto and Bitcoin for a really long time. And then when it became apparent that wasn't going to work anymore, they just shut up. They didn't become like pro Bitcoin and crypto when Trump went pro and said, you know, all the cool stuff you're playing with. Like they didn't mirror him, but they did shut up about it. They did, like, somebody got a memo or an email to Elizabeth Warren and said, please shut your mouth. This is hurting us. And I really think that's what happened with Litecoin, is that it didn't convince anybody really, in a sense, but it got them to stop saying that and stop, because a lot of people, I think, did believe Craig Wright and everybody, and Roger Ver, who was like, oh, they're just going to steal coins. And then literally somebody put like $20 million of Litecoin on a SegWit address and said, steal it. And they just sat it there. It says, steal it. And they're like, oh, you can steal it. It's like, okay, here it is. And it like just kept months and months, another month went by, and it sat there. And then that just became not part of this conversation anymore. I think it wasn't everything, like it wasn't the reason, but I think it was a big part of why they kept losing points.
You know, I think you guys are right. I think I'm making this mistake I keep trying not to make, which is stop thinking people are going to look at these things in a non-stupid way. So anyone can spend SegWit FUD was ridiculous, but you're right. Maybe it's a factor, because now I look at covenants, and the main knee-jerk reaction seems to be the government can force you to encumber your coins in a, you know, in a, like, right. And every day someone comes up with that argument against covenants, and I'm like, that does not apply here in a unique sense, because you can do that with multisig. So if it's a worry, it's already a thing, and that's not like
you can't put a recursive covenant on somebody else's address. Like, and I don't think people realize that, is that like even a recursive covenant just means that you're inside the keys that created it, and you're just in like a sub key, which means that you don't have like you don't have a wallet. You're just using somebody else's wallet. But as far as like a recursive covenant that like is literally a blacklist that you can't use it or you can't do something, If you make an address and give it to somebody, they can't add new stipulations to that. You have created that, and that's it. That includes all the covenants, all the multisig, all the everything.
Yeah.
It still works the same way. Time locks have the same security profile as to somebody can force a time lock on your coins. No, they can't. Not unless you're using their wallet and they're telling you how to generate your stuff. But that's a different problem than time locks can be forced on you.
It's not immune to coercion. Like a government can say you must use an address that provably only has outputs that are on this approved list, but that's exactly the same as them saying you must send to an address that we generate together that's a multisig address that I have one of the private keys for, and it's a 2 of 2. So you can't spend it without my permission. They can just as trivially do that. And if that's a problem, then it's a problem, right? Like, but at the end of the day, this is like Bitcoin can't. It's almost as dumb as like someone can come to me and hold a gun to my head and tell me to give them my
they
Bitcoin.
Can.
Like,
that's
sure, but that's just Bitcoin. You know? That's just there's nothing you can do. Well, there's nothing you can do about it. Like, I mean, well, there are mitigative steps.
It's just external
to
the network. Like, it's got nothing to do with the rules. It's got nothing to do with the opcode. You know, like it's just not relevant.
Yeah, and it's just not unique to covenants, right? But like you say, that does seem to be the main sticking point. And interestingly, Andreas, whose name keeps coming up today, was like the first to push that FUD. Like he did a video on CTV and was like, "Oh, governments can force people to encumber coins, you know, government blacklists and all that stuff." And it's like that's just not. It's an amazingly bad argument to make, but it's so terrifying that when you hear it, you go, "Oh no, I don't like it." So that's it. But it's not an intelligent argument to make against it. Like the three positions I've summarized against it are that one, which is Grubel's, the people pushing for it don't really care about 8 billion people having UTXOs and access to the base layer for cheap and all that stuff. Because if they did, they wouldn't be, massively against making the filters work properly. And Jimmy Song's position was what we've been talking about for the most part, which is you can do it already. People just aren't bothered because it's not that compelling and because you keep rugging them by changing the design space. And Giacomo's position is the people pushing for it are assholes, and you can't let assholes put upgrades into Bitcoin because he's like, we did with SegWit 2x, we did SegWit 2x. We literally have 2 megabyte blocks and SegWit. That's literally what SegWit 2x was. It's just we didn't want to do it the way they told us to with the New York agreement. We didn't want to be like, yeah, Brian Armstrong and Jeff Garzik are now in charge of Bitcoin's code base. Yeah. Like, we didn't want to do that for political reasons. We actually did the upgrade, though. Obviously, it was a soft fork instead of a hard fork. But the point is, we basically have SegWit 2x, but we didn't want to let the New York agreement and Barry Silver and all these assholes come in and start throwing their weight around and telling us what's what. Because
not only would it set an awful precedent, but they also wrote garbage code that never produced a block. Like there's a reason why asshole and incompetence goes together.
It wasn't that bad.
It was an off by one error. But that's the thing, though, is that they made a naive mistake in the implementation, and they were ready to go. Like, this was ready to implement. People had downloaded it and were running it. Like, it was a horrible bug. It was
at the advice of
and it was a horrible bug specifically because of how naive it was.
And while they were accusing everybody, like Bitcoin core people or whatever, of like hijacking development and taking over Bitcoin or whatever, they were literally trying to hijack. They were trying to
fire the developers.
Like the GitHub, and they were trying to change. Yeah. I mean, that was like explicit. So
I think this actually goes all the way back to, and in fact, let's hit news items because we're already way into this. And we've hit a couple already. But the argument that has actually consumed me more recently, and why I've been less about like it's super important to have covenants, is just that the news item specifically is that Blockstream opens a research center in Lugano, Switzerland, focusing on liquid and lightning advancements, which is actually really cool. Blockstream, I've heard some things that they're making a pretty big push in 2025, and I'm pretty excited to see what they're going to be doing. But here's the thing: is that if you have something cool to build with CTV, if you have something that's like revolutionary that you can build with OpCat, like you have covenants on Liquid. Like you just have them. Like just build it. Just build it. Like you will get all the fireworks you need. You will get all of the support if you build something awesome. And if you build it on Liquid, you will have extremely minimal porting problems to then put it on Bitcoin later. None of your work will be wasted. And you'll have just shown everybody exactly what a potent and critical tool that it is for all of us to get the future that we want, where everybody can hold their own keys and the whole 8 billion people on planet Earth can be sovereign, and there's no government and there's privacy and all of that great stuff. Do it. Do it. There's nothing holding anybody back from doing it. Lots less bitching, lots more building. Done. Problem solved.
And the privacy benefits of Liquid should not be like understated when you're mixing it with Lightning. I think it's pretty great. So
yeah, Liquid's amazing. It's incredibly underrated.
1000%. And it is the test bed that Litecoin was, I think, for all of the things that are contentious right now. Yeah.
Times 10. Like it's way better than a shit
just
coin.
In general, yes, but I mean it in the sense that like you have so much that you can do on Liquid, and they've built tools that make it easy to work with. Like there's just no reason not to build it there first if it's something that you hope to bring to Bitcoin. Because it's usable on Liquid. And there's a lot of tools that like I love the Aqua wallet. It's a really, and Bolts has become like a really critical piece of the whole stack. I've been onboarding people to Aqua. Like Jan 3 has built some really cool stuff. So yeah, I think that's it. It's like, okay, like I think we're done with verbal arguments. Build something. Like just build something.
It's a good point. I think after this conversation, and like a lot of it's just me thinking out loud, so I appreciate you indulging me on it. But it's just, I really do think that the nays have it. Like it's just at this point, there's upgrade fatigue. There's demonstrably no viable way to solve unintended consequences of forks, and it just doesn't have the wow factor. There isn't a thing that CTV does that makes everyone go, yeah, I want that. Like Segwit had it, Schnorsig's had it, and like some of the multisig stuff that's going to come out with Taproot is going to have been worth it. So, but I just don't see it for anything else. And I think the people pushing for it they're all just young people. Like in every case, they're always just younger people that are like excited to build, and
they just want the new thing instead of realizing the actual tech that we have.
Yeah. One thing, Mechanic, you said to me, or you said a long time ago, not really related to covenants, was I think it was in an open source versus closed source debate or proprietary debate. And you were like, well, building good UX stuff is hard. The kind of developers that work for Apple and stuff like that, these are guys that are doing kind of monotonous coding tasks. The creative coding tasks are fun. These are the things like we love to come up with new op codes and these new like brainiac stuff. And we love to write the alpha software for it because that's fun. That's like sitting at the bar, drinking a beer, drawing a picture, this is stuff we do in our free time, but like actually making a product like a UTXO sharing product, that's just going to be hard. Like you're going to have to pay developers to do shit you don't want to do. And you have to pay them. That means you have to have a business model. That means you have to have demand. Like that means like that the whole business aspect comes from it. And so like, with the spam stuff or the NFT stuff and stuff like that has its own business model. So you're going to be able to pay developers to build those kind of wallets like really quickly. But the paying developers to do the hard UX stuff, like new wallets for UTXO sharing, where's the alpha coming from? Where is the income coming from? Who are the customers that are paying for that wallet to be developed? Because this would be different if we saw demand for UTXOs going through the roof right now. But You know, it's just like actually, if there was a lot of demand for this kind of stuff, and I'll granted there is some demand to fix Lightning, definitely, I get that. But if there was like more demand for, you know, UTXO ownership, I would probably have a different view. I'd be like, yeah, we probably need to do something. But I'm just.
Yeah, we really don't need scammers and dumb money designing Bitcoin.
This is the biggest point ever, which just destroys the covenants advocacy, I think, is that L1 is cheap and L1 is very, very simple to use. And I don't know the percentage, but it's not great. So many people are just still leaving their coins with third-party custodians. And the reason they're doing that is not because we don't have covenants. They're doing it because it's just natural to them. So you can come up with the best timeout trees and ARC and all that stuff with covenants. In best case scenario, you can come up with all that stuff and they still aren't going to do it. That's just a fact. Like I'm looking at the blockchain now, fees are 9 sats a byte. All right. That's higher than it has been for a while, but
I was about to say it was 4 yesterday.
Yeah. Most of the time I look at it, it's 2 sats a byte, which is just like for most people that can afford to be into Bitcoin, even if they're not part of the West, they can afford a couple of transactions a month. If it's costing you under $1 to open a Lightning channel, like, come on. There's nothing about adding covenants that's suddenly going to make another billion people hop on and suddenly have Bitcoin in a sovereign way. Yeah. It's just not realistic, man.
Yeah, there needs to be demand for it first before, because the demand will probably end up being the thing that really informs what kind of solution we need anyway.
Yeah, and it'll pay for the devs too. It'll pay for the devs to make the wallets.
That point you were just highlighting, Steve, again, is like, I'm glad you brought it up because I did say it before. I don't remember the context, but it's like Nostr is like the best example ever of people that want to have fun creating stuff that basically works when everyone on it is just there for the mission and wants to have a good time.
Yeah.
But then someone comes along, someone has to UX and like dealing with like DOS vectors and stuff like that is a paid job because no one wants to do it. It's not fun. It's boring. It's a grind. So this is why Start OS had to be like approached the way it was, with like people getting salaries and charging for products and stuff like that, and even starting out with like license and product keys and stuff like that. Because it's just, all this stuff exists. Nextcloud exists. It's great. Bitcoin Core exists. Lightning nodes exist. But if you want to run it outside of being a tech, informed technical enthusiast, your average normie can't run this stuff. It's too difficult. You need someone to come along and build Ubuntu, right? You can't just be like, hey, there's a GitHub with this thing called Linux on it. Like, you just need to spend 4 years learning how to use it all and put it all together and tweaking it endlessly. Like, someone has to come along and go, all right, I'll make it actually usable. And that's a job. Because you just have to sit there in customer support all day going, oh, right, there's a foot gun there and there's a foot gun there. And I'm sorry, that's just, people are annoyed. They're emailing you saying, this doesn't work. I need it fixed. I want my money back. No one's going to do stuff like that for fun. Yeah. That's not sitting at a bar with a piece of paper sketching out a new protocol and having some fun. It's sitting there at a laptop for 9 hours for 7 days a week, just dealing with people complaining at you. And I'm just like, no one's going to do that. Like for fun, because it's not fun. And so I think it's just, your point is right. Like someone's good, and building shit coins and scam coins is also very compelling and a lot of fun. Like, so people are going to do that. It's high time preference. It's fun. You make a lot of money. Building like good UX wallets with no foot guns in them that take advantage of covenants, it will be fun for a minute until you start getting to the edge cases where you have to stop people from hurting themselves. And then it's just like, I'm moving on to another project. I let this.
Then you super test netted it. You just.
You super test net. Perfect example.
Super test net just runs off to another project.
Yeah. I love super
whatever
test
the hell
net.
You want with this thing.
Yeah, I love all these guys. I love all these opcode guys, but there's no chance that after one of these CTV stuff gets implemented that they're going to like not think about another opcode. They're not gonna like, okay, now I'm gonna transition into the sales, the tech support department. Like they're just not gonna do that.
Like, man, even Satoshi had like limited ability to sit around and make it, just grind and make it work. Like a lot of people, like he had to do that for the good of the project. But another thing is just he wasn't that kind of guy. Like he wanted to invent a new monetary paradigm and be like, here you go, and it's like it does all this stuff, and see you later, have fun with it. And then you just get people like Luke that sit there for years being like, no, it has to do this, and like slowly cataloging everything and making it work and having this ultra conservative attitude. And it's just necessary, and someone's got to do it, and it's so thankless, and no one wants to. It's not fun.
Extremely thankless, and so rare to have somebody who even cares.
Yeah,
and you know what? It takes all kinds.
Luke is rare. It takes all types. No, but that's why we have capitalism and entrepreneurship. It's like you got to pay people to do the boring stuff. And Michael Saylor makes this point a lot. He's like, you guys aren't understanding like when the open source idealistic stuff stops and when the entrepreneurial aspect kicks in. And I think Saylor would say like this scaling second layer stuff, that needs to be an entrepreneurial activity. People need to fail. People need to lose money. Like that's a free market thing, the scaling aspect. And I don't know if I totally believe that, but I think there's something to that.
No, it's definitely a good point. I think, again, though, it's kind of bad in any direction. That's the ultimate conclusion of this debate, I think, is that if we don't scale with something like Covenants being, in the best scenario that you can imagine with like ARC and all that stuff, if we don't do that, then scaling Bitcoin literally just means third-party custodians, because like it kind of by default, it has to mean that.
Yeah. And the best case scenario is like eCash, basically. Like,
which is not... It's not super bad, like, or Liquid. Liquid is actually fine.
It still leaves us with a lot of potential benefits, but all it does is distribute the problem. Like, because right now, all of our third party is government. Like, government is the third party for all money, and it is the end all be all. So the idea would be that we could decentralize this down into like 150,000 entities spread all across the globe, and you could connect to anyone, but it doesn't solve the third party problem. It just aggressively distributes it against the government and central bank as the only and end all third parties of all money, which is what we have now.
Right. Which is a lot better. We shouldn't turn our nose up at it.
It would hopefully mean that competition keeps things mostly honest.
Yeah. It just means that the scale of problems is naturally going to be less. It won't be society destroying problems. It will be bank and community and town. Like it will, like the sides of the problem typically it will collapse before it gets to a systemic we're all effed problem, which is what we're all sitting on right now.
If you look at the internet, like we're all on, I mean, thankfully not as much anymore, but we've all been on very siloed social media networks, right? And as the problem has gotten worse, like we've looked for and people have been building alternative, things. And so it may be that Bitcoin adoption has to go a little bit in the wrong direction in order for there to be enough motivation to like build the thing that, people really need.
2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Or really want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's do a bit of a lightning round here, because I want to hit, there's a number of different like news items that don't require a whole lot of time, but I think they're important to bring up. One of them is just the Strike has launched Bitcoin auto withdrawals, and basically going back to the whole UTXO thing is I really think every service that does Bitcoin, especially that does DCA, like auto withdrawals should be a thing everywhere. And I guess it's pretty common, but it seems to be only common in Bitcoin circles. But I don't know that, I mean, kudos to them to finally doing it, but like,
is it auto withdrawals over Lightning?
That's a good question.
Does that work?
With Bolt 12, you could technically do that now. Or with Lightning address and stuff, you could do that now. But that requires somebody else to have a Lightning address, which is usually what Strike provides to people. So that's typically a custodial tool, I feel like.
Lightning addresses suck anyway, because DNS sucks. Bolt 12 doesn't suck, and I know Jack Mallers is like trying hard to push the envelope on that. But yeah,
I didn't think about whether that was actually Lightning or not. I think it's just a Bitcoin address. Like, I think it's just like you punch in a UTXO. Like,
it'd be better if you could give them an XPub.
That would
then they could iterate through the addresses.
Mm-hmm. That would be cool. A whole lot of people talk about how that's like a huge privacy problem, but it's like, dude, you can make like a sub XPub. And that gets into technical details, though. Somebody has to know like how to do that to make it separate.
It's
from their
strictly
other wallet.
better than using the same address over and over again.
Yeah.
So I mean, Bitcoin is not private, man. Like, it's not like if you want to work, I don't know. It's strictly better.
Well, now that we have, so does this work? Like, okay, so if you have, since we have, I mean, it should work. If you could give them, I mean, I don't know if they support this, but if you could give them like a liquid address, and they could use the liquid to Lightning bridge to send you liquid.
Well, this is the way. Like, this is the bull Bitcoin method that I really want to like champion. First off, they have like, they're not just auto withdrawal. You can't buy until we already have a method to pay you. Like,
right. I love that.
It's amazing, and that also introduces way less regulatory risk. By the way, because
it's kind of like robo-sats in that way. Is that like you can't give it to somebody else. Like, you have to use your wallet or whatever. So
yeah, like even with fiat and bull Bitcoin, if you put on like $100,000 to buy Bitcoin, they'll take it, but it's written there that if you don't spend this on Bitcoin, we are going to send it back to you within X time period. Like, we do not want to become custodians, which is amazing, because becoming a custodian means basically that's when it's all the the urine samples and the DNA samples and all that becomes required.
Dude, sending in urine samples is the worst. Oh my God. I have so many of those little cups. I've had to do that so many times. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. 23 and me and P. 23 and P.
23 and P.
I don't know, man. It's a good thing. Well done. I like Jack Mallers generally. I think he's like my favorite Bitcoin mainstream media news guy. Every time he goes on there, he's just so inappropriate. I love it.
It's killing the normie TV, dude. I love we have a normie TV division.
And any complaints or whatever you have about Strike, like I don't understand somebody who could be like, he's not building something awesome and not trying to build exactly what Bitcoin needs. Like, he seems to have put himself in a really good spot, and like you said, always entertaining. Big shout.
He got El Salvador to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, man. Like legend status.
What's your standard here, guys? Come on.
And he's still humble Bitcoiner, just hanging around, like having a beer, like just absolutely. Like, I love that guy. Honestly, I have so much time for Jack Mallers.
Next news item, we've got Cartwright in the UK has advised a new pension scheme to allocate 3% of pension portfolio's to Bitcoin.
Why so bearish?
Why so bearish, right? 3%? Come on, man.
So bearish.
But there's something really interesting here, because I kind of thought that would start in the last cycle, and it didn't really. Like, I think everybody was still too nervous to get in, and institutions are so slow moving. But it's going to be really interesting, because I think it's going to get to a point very, very quickly where pension schemes, retirement things that don't allocate some percent are going to be the ones that are should I work with you? And I think that shift is going to happen really quick. And it's going to be interesting.
Wasn't there a state that put pension funds or something before this last run up? Like, so they should be sitting, wasn't it like,
I could look through my last series of notes, maybe. There was one. There was it was like South Dakota or something. Wasn't somebody talking about that?
Like Wyoming or maybe Ohio. Like, there was something like, I don't know why I want to say Ohio. I don't know why Ohio would be. They're not
vague. I remember something
vaguely in my mind,
vaguely about that. I wonder if it was just a proposal and like nothing concrete has surfaced with it. But
I don't know. It'd be interesting because they've done really well. If they, because it's been months ago.
Yeah.
Like,
and it wasn't many months ago that the price was low. In fact, I posted in the audio notes one of the I had a bunch of money set aside, a bunch of fiat set aside for the construction stuff. And I put an irresponsible amount of it into Bitcoin when it dipped down to 50K. And I had almost forgotten about it. Like I just kind of like move it to this is my stack wallet for this year kind of thing. And somebody, I think it was Bitcoin Pup, maybe. I don't know. Somebody in the audio knots went up and found it. It was just from August. It was like, it wasn't even that long ago. And found the post and then reposted it like down to the bottom of the chat. He says, I bet you feel good about this now, don't you? And I was like, I do. I feel really good about it. Thank you. That made my day. Because I'd totally forgotten about it.
Another item maybe is a MicroStrategy. I ended up buying some because in Canada you have these retirement accounts, and it's basically like if you earn money, government will take it all unless you put some of it in a retirement account and invest it. Then you can just deduct that off the income you apparently made. So I'm like, all right, I'll just put a bunch of my income in MicroStrategy stock. And even if it goes to zero, it's better than it going to the Canadian government. Yeah. So I'm like, this works. Like, I'm going to do this. And maybe it goes up a bunch and I'm a genius investor too. But I'm just like, I'm just going to do this. Like, I can't buy Bitcoin with it because it doesn't work that way. I have to buy some stupid blue-pilled version of Bitcoin like MicroStrategy. But maybe, and then I start thinking, maybe he's right though. Maybe we do get the whole infinite money glitch thing that he's doing where you just keep borrowing worthless money and using it to buy Bitcoin while people still take fiat for it. Like, maybe it works.
I legit think it ends when we start pricing stocks. Like when we start pricing the risk reward ratio to an investment in Bitcoin. When we compare against like what the CAGR or whatever in Bitcoin is going to be, what's our rate of return every year? Okay, that will be the base interest rate.
The government,
like that will be the
government specifically targets it for being like some sort of
financial scheming. Like, you're not allowed to borrow shitty money in order to buy good money. That's illegal.
Wait, that's illegal. Well, that was fun. Buying some MicroStrategy stock, and I love it because it's all tax free. So if I sell it at a profit, it's in a retirement account. I don't think I pay tax on it. So
yeah, if it stays there, nice. Yeah, you're good. That's awesome. I find this kind of funny. So Detroit plans to accept Bitcoin and crypto for taxes by mid 2025, supported by PayPal. And there's something really funny about like a city that's in such horrible condition being like, we'll take Bitcoin.
Yeah, we'll take.
Just pay us anything.
What's the worst shitcoin? What's the worst shitcoin? Like, we'll take BSV. We'll take At this point, we'll just take anything.
Like, please just give us something. It's funny because Lugano, oh man,
Luga
what was his
coin.
name? It's not the mayor. Who was it? I can't remember. The guy from Lugano who has done like serious work in making it so that the whole city can accept Bitcoin for payments for permits, taxes, like basically everything. And they've like built this serious integration with their banking partner, and it's like super simple. The process is zero difference from the normal process, except that you can just select and then send Bitcoin to an address or like pay, I think, over Lightning as well. I mean, he did this long presentation on it. And he said this is basically anybody in Switzerland, any municipality in Switzerland can basically plug into this with nothing because of all the work they've done. But then he was talking about how like almost they've received like $500 total, like since they started, like it's like almost no payments or whatever, because I think just nobody wants to, like you think about like the phase we are in, like who wants to pay the government Bitcoin, like why would you want to do that? In addition to the fact that you then basically announce to them that this is your address, like even like with my accounting and stuff that I do, like I don't tell everybody like what address, I don't list addresses, I list dollar amounts for what the value is. do my taxes or whatever, but I'm not going to give them my wallet, and if I pay them directly, that immediately becomes a problem.
Wasn't that an EU thing for a while where they're like, you have to print all of your Bitcoin addresses and tell us all of them?
Yeah.
And there was like, immediately people were like, all right, I'm going to send you my every single generatable address for this. It's 10 to the 40 numbers. I'm going to send it to like,
go ahead and brute force that.
Start at the end and then we start at the end and go backwards, find them.
Working to rule. I'm in rolling forward state on a 4 gigabyte Raspberry Pi. I don't know if you've ever dealt with the misery of a Bitcoin node in rolling forward state. It's like when there's a glitch in the chain data and it has to like reprocess the chain, and it's like
it's basically
worse
from scratch
than IBD. Yeah, it's worse than that somehow. It's like one of these. Like it just goes on forever. It's like
because from IBD,
it's like about
at least
40
like
seconds a block
that you can compare against, and the roll the rollback or whatever is like you now have the entire thing to check against. So the amount of data that you have to process against is just like that much larger, as opposed to IBD is that you can just like inch forward and only reference the very last thing because you already did it. Yeah, that's gross.
Yeah,
that's gross.
Oh, it sucks. And it's a Pi. I need this to work for a live stream I'm doing on Monday.
Good luck.
And it's Wednesday.
Good luck.
So I'm on block 832,275.
And you're going backwards, right?
No, I'm going forwards.
It goes
forwards.
Okay.
But like, this is the thing, like the bigger the DB cache you have during IBD, the worse it is if you accidentally interrupt the process. Like if you ungracefully shut down Bitcoin when you had like an 8 gigabyte cache of UTXOs, you're screwed. Like then, but the irony is you had the big cache to get through IBD faster. So it's just.
Yeah, that's the funny thing about like the initial syncing or whatever is like the first 500,000 blocks take like 20 minutes. But then you get into block 600,000 and they start like ticking one at a time, like duh, duh, and it hurts.
Yeah, man. And I'm syncing on a Pi 5 on an Umbrel that I've got to use for a demonstration too. And I mean, I started that last night and I'm about to load it now. I bet it's probably almost finished actually. I'm 88% of the way through. Like Pi 5 with NVMe is so quick. It can do it in like 14 hours or something.
Oh, wow. Wow, yeah, that's amazing. Crazy. This is a big one that I'm pretty stoked about. I don't think we know exactly what it means quite yet. But a judge has just ruled, not specifically in the Tornado Cash case, but in a sister or partner case or something, has just ruled that Tornado Cash is to be removed from the OFAC sanctions list. That it is basically not legal for them to have the code and the software be something that is censorable, that is restricted, and that you can't export it. But what's crazy about this, so I'll read what Lola Leets and The Rage have said about this. Says this is hugely good news for anyone developing privacy software, and will likely have a positive impact on Roman Storm's trial, where it's debated whether the court may criminally charge the developers of the software. So that's basically the foundation of the case itself, is saying that because they have created, it's kind of like listing cryptography as munitions, and then the people who created the cryptography itself are arms dealers. But if the judge says that cryptography is not munitions, well then how's your trial against arms dealers going to go? So that's a big step in the right direction. Hopefully it means, I mean, there will probably still be a bunch of back and forth on this, but hopefully it means good things for basically both the trial for Tornado Cash, but also just Samurai Wallet, for basically all the privacy software in general, because it's kind of setting a precedent that, well, no, you can't do that. Like, you've overstepped your authority and you cannot criminalize the software, which is a pretty good barrier for developers.
Where is this stuff being tried?
It says Fifth Circuit. I'm pretty sure this is all in the EU, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember. Wait, perhaps Congress will update IEEPA? Maybe Tornado Cash is actually in the US.
It feels to me like there needs to be a dramatic overhaul. No one has any idea what a money transmitter is. Like, a server that processes payments, is that a money transmitter? Well, where's Mercury in the sky these days? I mean, it's like we have absolutely no clear guidance over whether you are involved in monetary transactions.
That's kind of by design.
We need some RFK style, just huge overhaul of all of this framework.
If there is a time to get it, it will probably be in this administration, just because there's so many people fighting to try to get some sort of a concrete definition for this crap. But most of the rules and stuff are created in the 80s, before the internet was even a thing. So of course it's going to sound analog and it's going to be vague when it's not even built around the understanding of what the hell the internet is.
Right. It reminds me.
But even beyond that, they passed the healthcare bill so that you could find out what was in it. I mean, they build stuff, with all sorts of vagaries on purpose so that they can attach and build other structures, on top of it. It's there so that they can stop you when you're doing something they don't like or that threatens their...
It's intentionally vague, and then precedent gets set in various legal cases that they just it becomes a self-referential thing where they're like, well, this guy wrote some code and he went to jail, but that guy wrote some code and he didn't. So it just sort of I don't know, to me it's just Adam Gibson and the Wasabi guys all right. Yeah. It seems to me that the Wasabi guys did get in some heat in America, but not anywhere else. Mm-hmm. Adam Gibson's just fine. And the Samurai guys got in absolutely just buried under just the weight of, tyranny. And it seemed to me basically that Samurai got in trouble mainly for the way they marketed rather than anything else, because it doesn't do anything that these other implementations don't.
That's really what it was.
Yeah, well, they were just saying stuff like, hey, if you're a Russian oligarch, you can come and wash your money through here and stuff. And it's just I think that's actually what provoked the authorities into going after them. I don't think it's about the design of the product or anything. I think it was about the marketing.
It's about the intent. Or they're saying that that's the intent. But I think their defense is that it's just edgy marketing. We're just doing that because anybody can use it. We can't control who or where any of this thing is. This is designed this way. And so we're just doing the thing that's politically edgy right now to get attention, which worked in the wrong way.
Well, I don't know how to reconcile the whole thing and why some people are getting in trouble and others aren't. I don't know why that is. And I can only come up with that reason.
Yeah. Or I think it's just because everything's illegal and they just have to pick and choose who they go after. It's the whole 3 felonies a day thing. We all commit 3 felonies a day. It's just about who they want to go after, who makes them, who embarrasses them, who looks like a criminal. And so we just find a thing that they're guilty of. And everything's so vague and there are so many hundreds of thousands of pages of law. It's just find one. Just find a way that they're doing something illegal. They'll find it, Yeah.
Hey, I gotta run soon, but I did have one thing I thought about that I'm interested in you guys' opinion on. I thought was funny. So I read that Cynthia Loomis bill about the U.S. Strategic Reserve or whatever, and I actually read the part where they talked about custody. And just like you were saying, it looked like this legislation was written in the 80s. It really looked like this bill was just copy paste of the gold reserve. It said the Bitcoin will be stored in strategic diverse warehouses across the country. Did you guys read that? It said nothing about
I think you posted it. I think you sent it to me in our group chat.
It said nothing about who will hold the keys. What will be the process for changing over key signatures? It just said like, well, it was stored in storage facilities. Like, what? I mean, was that done on purpose to like get it through?
Bitcoin bricks will be stacked 5 high and
like
10 wide.
But I mean, Cynthia Loomis is smart. Like, but was it written in this way because she thought this is how she could get it passed? Like, if you start talking about key holders, you'll ruin everybody.
Confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that's why she did it?
Possible.
That's very possible. Is that they have to think about it in like which bank, like which vault is it going to be in, and that the specificity of it being the keys is probably just that, specificity and the details or whatever. Maybe that's why. It's funny though.
Are these bills typically written in a kind of like parallel English where it's like legalese where nothing means what you think it means?
Okay.
Like, so a warehouse can mean like a venue or something. Like,
yeah.
But I mean, it is politicians though. It's not law, but I don't know. Maybe it overlaps.
It's all going to be on Windows XP.
Oh man, you know it. The unpatched version, like just the one with all the exploits. I mean, the funny thing I found out about that was like some Lola Leets wrote some like expose, like the government's going to make a tax and they're going to use that to build their strategic Bitcoin reserve. And everyone's like, oh my goodness, no. And I'm like, so I wrote this like sarcastic tweet that was just like, I had just heard a rumor that the U.S. government plans to use extortion and taxation to get to build its strategic reserve, and everyone responded to it like, "What? Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Wait a minute. Do you guys? How else do you think governments get anything? There is no other mechanism." Like, and I remember just like, "Oh yeah, no, it's not. It's not just." Did Donald Trump get paid for that shift he did at McDonald's? Like, is that how they're funding it? Like, they're all going to go and get jobs.
Mechanic, are you going to mine to the government's address? You can put the government's address in your miner.
I'll do it if they give me a green card.
Oh my god!
All right, guys.
You know what?
Yeah.
I was about to say we should just end it here. I have a bunch of other news items, but I think I'm just going to run through them in the outro to this, just so we can bullet point if anybody is curious, because there's some interesting things to mention. But most of it's just kind of like general stuff like, oh, more people are putting it in their strategic reserve and more people are allocating to it. So it's just kind of like, it's a bullet point, So I think we'll end it here. We had a pretty good one. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you guys for coming on Bitcoin Audible.
Started worse than any of them.
I swear to God, if I just have to do this on the app for now, I don't even care. I'm just so fed up with Riverside on this computer. I don't know what is happening, but we're going to have a different solution. And I'm sorry, I'm probably going to make you all try it here in the next couple of weeks.
Well, keep working good. What was wrong? Were you not able to get into the Keep
after
chat?
Riverside made my computer eat shit? I could not get into Keep on my Mac.
Couldn't do anything.
So like, it might just be Keep. I just need to find a good way to just record in Keep. That might be the solution. But we'll talk. Steve, thank you for joining me.
Yeah. See ya.
Mechanic, Jeff.
It's
been a good one.
Great. Have a good day.
Yeah, man. Later, guys.
All right, it is time for the lightning round. We are going to go through as many of these bullet points that we did not get to really quick. So first, boom. Deutsche Telekom's MMS and Bankhaus Metzler pilot Bitcoin mining to manage surplus energy in Germany. So anybody who's been keeping up on it, Germany's green plan and climate-friendly plan is kind of falling apart, and they're having an energy disaster, essentially. They're having huge spikes. One of the people who came on very recently, who does a ton of the management on the grid, said that they are literally on the edge of blackouts during normal days just because there's like a week of like no wind and not very good sun. So this is actually a really good sign for them having to basically bend the knee on the narrative and actually do something that matters, something that gives a practical, real result and will actually balance out their grid over the long term. So this is really interesting, and to see that become normalized in a country or a location and culture that has been so vehemently trying to be virtue signaling at the cost of literally doing things that are damaging or stupid, to see them kind of have to backtrack or change their tune and notice that Bitcoin is actually an important piece of this puzzle, that's interesting. Bullet point. Argentina's central bank hosts a live Bitcoin mining art exhibit. A live art exhibit. I didn't, what? And titled Artificial Intelligence and the Future of the Economy. That's kind of cool. Millier seems super on board with the whole Bitcoin thing. So, interesting development that Argentina's central bank is showing off Bitcoin mining at an art exhibit. Who knew? Bullet point. New Market Capital launches Bitcoin collateralized loan strategy, explained by their CEO on CNBC. It's just interesting seeing people starting to get into that market. And one thing that I have known personally with conversations that I've had with people who are in the Bitcoin loan industry is one of the big problems wasn't actually about Bitcoin. The problem was about getting liquidity on the fiat side, because people were afraid the deal seemed too good to be true. Over-collateralized loan, great interest rate for them, and really great time periods, and basically the security of the entire setup seemed too good to be true. And then as soon as they hear the word Bitcoin, they pick up and run and they go buy their bonds for 4% that are losing money. So it's actually a really, really good thing to actually see more capital flow and see people start to de-risk the idea of being associated with Bitcoin in their minds. And that's something that this specific cycle probably will change dramatically, which will be good because if you want to get a collateralized Bitcoin loan, your interest rate may very likely go down in the near future because people will be less concerned, less associating the fact that Bitcoin is just a nonsense thing that is only a scam and is dangerous and is scary. The more that fades into the background, the more those sorts of financial instruments will be available to people. Bullet. Shanghai court affirms Bitcoin ownership legality under Chinese property laws. So the South China Morning Post reported on this, and that's interesting just because China has been a largely don't even know the rules of the setup. Is kind of like a hands-off. They banned mining. They sort of stopped caring about it. It's kind of interesting to see it slowly make, incremental steps back in the other direction. Bullet. Polish presidential candidate Sławomir promises a strategic Bitcoin reserve. That one was a Twitter post just kind of showing that, oh, I'm a different candidate. You should vote for me. Let me appeal to people. It's become a talking point to differentiate yourself. Doesn't mean that they're going to have a Bitcoin reserve, but it is interesting nonetheless that it is entering itself into all of the presidential conversations. Bullet. Pennsylvania proposes investing 10% of its $7 billion treasury into Bitcoin via the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Act. Now, not voted on. We do not know what the outcome of this is, but the interesting thing is that last October, the Pennsylvania House approved a related bill known as the Bitcoin Rights Bill, which protected the right to self-custody and digital payments. So something to keep an eye on, and that will be big news if that actually goes through. Bullet. SEC Chair Gary Gensler announces resignation effective January 20th, 2025. He's just running away because he doesn't want to get fired. Bullet. Bitcoin hacker Ilya Lichtenstein sentenced to 5 years for a $3.6 billion Bitcoin theft. Ross Ulbricht's got 2 life sentences plus 40 years, and he didn't steal anything from anybody. It's remarkable that just undermining the state's rules peacefully will get you 100 times the sentence as stealing almost $4 billion from innocent people. That shows you where their priorities are. Boom! Now let's get some bad news. Bullet point. Crypto CEO Dean Shurko was kidnapped in Toronto and released after a $1 million ransom payment. Stay safe out there, guys. Conceal carry. Bullet. Russia bans winter crypto mining in Siberia, North Caucasus, and occupied Ukraine due to energy shortages. Looks like that advertisement about how great their energy sources were. Not so much. Bullet. U.S. Congress urges stricter regulations on crypto mixers like Tornado Cash, citing misuse for illicit activities. They're trying to squeeze this through with FinCEN, and as The Rage says, they still don't know how software works. And they are appealing to Janet Yellen and the Treasury, trying to say that mixers should have strict reporting requirements on exactly how everything is mixed, which is hilarious. Why would you want... What's the point? What? You're going to KYC to mix your coins? You're going to report everything to get privacy that you should have by default because it's a basic right? Not going to happen, guys. Nobody's going to do that. And our wonderful members of Congress come with a couple of very expected members. This is 7 members of Congress who are pleading to Janet Yellen and FinCEN to do something about the awful, terrible criminals. Sean Casten, Bill Foster, Stephen Lynch, David Scott, Emmanuel Cleaver II, don't know that guy, Joyce Beatty, Beatty, is that how you say that? And of course, Brad Sherman's in the bunch. Of course he is. Bullet! Block shifts focus to Bitcoin mining and BitKey. So Block has shifted over to mining and the BitKey wallet, which I actually have not gotten to use yet, so I can't say much about it. But they have shut down Tidal and the Web5 projects. And that includes TBD, which we've mentioned recently. I think I talked about it in the episode with Miljan from Primal. And I really kind of think it's because Jack Dorsey is super down the Nostr rabbit hole and doesn't really feel like it needs to be reinvented. I think it's because Nostr's winning. Just saying. Bullet point. Block introduces Proto, a suite of Bitcoin mining tools and products. That's kind of the same bullet point, but it's really interesting. The idea of simplifying and productizing really easy Bitcoin mining tools and products, basically doing what they did to BitKey to Bitcoin mining. That's a really interesting prospect. It's kind of like Datum with Ocean, is making it easy to use, making it simple to run, I think is a really valuable thing to have in the ecosystem. Bullet! Bitcoin Fog operator Roman Sterlingov sentenced to 12.5 years for money laundering conspiracy. And they hit him with $395 million in forfeiture for money because the mixer mixed $400 million. I don't think they understand how this thing works. I unfortunately don't know much about that case, and I really hope they appeal because this sounds ridiculous. And another great example, the Bitfinex hacker got 5 years for stealing $3.6 billion. And Roman, who there is strong evidence to suggest he didn't have anything to do with Bitcoin Fog and he simply used it. But even if he was the operator of Bitcoin Fog, doing nothing more than offering privacy as a service to other people got him 12.5 years, longer than the person who stole $4 billion from a bunch of innocent people. Again, priorities. The government hates you. They do not care about your safety. They do not care if somebody steals something from you. They do not care if people kill or rape you. They care if you threaten their ability to be in charge and their control and the perception of their power and authority over everything else. That's what they care about. The government is not your friend. Bullet! The FBI raided Polymarket CEO's home. The DOJ investigates alleged platform violations, which is the betting market that bet that Trump was going to win. That's actually really funny. That whole thing is kind of interesting. That's something that might be worth doing a show about. I don't know. Bullet! Pleb Lab launches Pleb Devs, an education platform for Bitcoin developers. Really cool to see just more motivation, like the Pleb Lab guys a lot, and a stronger push for getting more development, getting more eyes, and getting more people working on and in Bitcoin. Pretty dope. That wraps it up, ladies and gentlemen. I told you there was a lot that we didn't get to, but those are all the big ones for the month that I think were worth talking about and getting a little bit of reference on the election was clearly the big one, and I think it has had a big impact on the price and the perception of where Bitcoin is going when it comes to jurisdictional safety, so to speak. A really big month. I really appreciate the Roundtable guys joining me as always and going through what we could get through in the time we had available and fighting with the technical difficulties that we had for this episode. And I will catch you on the next episode of Bitcoin Audible. I hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I guess this will come out after Thanksgiving, so you'll be hearing this in hindsight. Have a great holiday. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to check out Fold. And thank you to everyone who supports the show and what I do. And I'll catch you on the next one. I'm Guy Swan. This is Bitcoin Audible. And until next time, everybody, take it easy, guys.